As I was getting ready this week, I came across a quote from the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. He said, "Resilient trees can weather a violent storm because their roots are deep and firm." That strong connection to what is necessary to support strength and resilience. And a couple of weeks ago, I spoke about the necessity of staying rooted in our values. We talked about the importance of finding meaning to get us through the tough times. This week, we're going to focus a little more on flexibility. Continuing with that tree metaphor, when I think of resilience and trees, what comes to my mind is the flexibility of saplings. Mature trees do have some flexibility, but nothing like a young one. Younger trees don't have that strength of a well-developed trunk that older trees can rely on. So when the winds come, the only thing that they have going for them is an ability to bend to prevent from breaking. As we come closer to the end of our month on the topic of resilience, I realize there's something about this combination that's vitally important: rootedness and flexibility. It's a very delicate balance. Getting it right, knowing when to hold them and when to fold them, as they say, is a key to success. Today we're talking about the flexibility side of that balance. If you're like me, or I guess like John, a little bit stubborn and keen on controlling as much as possible, this might be a challenge. But I do think we can practice adaptability. That's what I want to focus on today. Hopefully we can learn to be a little more flexible. The time to learn to bend is not in the middle of the storm, in the middle of a passionate disagreement with your partner or a major loss in your life. Those are not the usual times when you realize, oh right, it's time to be flexible. I heard a sermon about that once. Adaptability is something that we can practice, I think. A skill. It seems to me that there are a couple of different ways of building it. One is deep curiosity, and the other is acceptance. We Unitarian Universalists pride ourselves on being open-minded. But being open-minded is a little bit of a paradoxical thing. In our striving to be open-minded, we're sometimes tempted to point the finger at others who we perceive as close-minded. In that accusation, we manage to narrow our own hearts and minds. It's a little bit like the virtue of humility. I am the most humble person in the world. It doesn't work. It seems to me that open-mindedness, like humility and probably most virtues, is best demonstrated through action rather than claiming to be the best at it. Rather than suggesting that others should be more like us, more open-minded, it works better if we lead by example. May we lead by example in our openness and curiosity, rather than wearing those labels like a badge of honor. The second big challenge that comes with curiosity is responding to the information we find. We humans are driven way more by emotion than we are by reason, and that is a hard pill to swallow for our liberal circles with our science and reason that we love and think we live by. So prove me wrong. I challenge you. I challenge us, not just to be curious and open to new ideas, but to actually respond to that information with our actions. It turns out genuine curiosity involves a level of discipline. We don't often think of those two things together. But without some willingness to respond to information, what good is it? Discipline is also a necessary ingredient because not all learning is easy or even fun. Yes, we can absorb some information from YouTube or a quick conversation with a friend who's summarizing an NPR story. But I don't know if that quite counts as curiosity. That's more akin to entertainment or seeking confirmation for what we already believe. The discipline of curiosity doesn't have to be drudgery or particularly formal, but I think it does require us to be a little beyond what's convenient or what's comfortable. This open-minded stuff turns out to be a lot more difficult than we first thought. So, practicing curiosity, I would encourage us to focus on something that excites us, to dig in a little deeper than you initially expected. Another piece of curiosity that I think is worth lifting up in Tapestry, where we're surrounded by bright people with a wealth of life experience and professional experience, is asking questions. Liz Baer is really good at this. The words, "Can I ask you a question?" come out of her mouth more than anyone else I have ever heard. And Liz is a smart cookie. She's also super curious and willing to put herself out there if she doesn't know something. If you're curious, ask the question. And if it was the wrong question to ask, if you really shouldn't have asked the question, then you'll probably learn something else instead. Either way, you're going to learn something. I will add a little caveat to this. Maybe don't ask the question, a personal question about someone's culture that you perceive as different from your own, someone that you just met. Instead, hang out for a while, get to know them a little bit, have some conversation about work and family interests, and then, if you still have a burning question, ask in a way that demonstrates your sincere curiosity and open-mindedness. Ask because you want to know that person more closely as a friend, not to see them more as a stranger. Curiosity can also mean trying new things. Religious community is an amazing opportunity to try new things. We need all sorts of volunteer support. If you want to learn baking or how to use QuickBooks, or teaching children, or minor electrical repair or plumbing, music, public speaking, flower arranging, protest organizing, knitting, we've got you covered. People here will teach you, and then they will probably thank you for your efforts. Also, if you love to do something that you've been doing for 20 years, you might consider a new context for that skill. We're actually recruiting bakers to bake bread for a local food pantry. And if you're crafty, if you're a knitter or a crocheter, I know a lot of people would have welcomed a hat or an extra pair of gloves this past week. Or, instead of cleaning your own home, come help Tapestry with our spring clean, April 8th. It's cleaning, but in a different place. Seriously, we are going to need a lot of help with that. And we could use some extra teachers in our classrooms as well. I guess that's all to say, curiosity involves some level of risk. You put yourself out there when you ask a question. Learning something new can be really humbling. And sometimes it just doesn't work. All of that is part of the exercise in adaptation and flexibility. It's about increasing our capacity to be uncomfortable and still be okay. It's kind of funny when you put it that way, but that's exactly what it is. Practicing being uncomfortable. In addition to curiosity, the second way that we can increase our adaptability is learning to accept what we cannot change. And it sounds so easy, doesn't it? Accepting reality as it is. Accepting things we cannot change. The good news is we can practice. There's a story that I have told in a sermon before, but I'm going to tell it again because I think we can all relate to it. The Reverend Doug Kraft talks about a particularly unpleasant experience on a flight where he learned to appreciate the present moment. After a first flight was delayed, he barely made his connection. He was hoping to get a snack, some food in between flights, but that was out the window. Shortly after the plane had pushed back from the jetway came the moment we've all experienced. The captain comes over the intercom. "We want to give you an update on our progress." We all know that's bad news. He was one of those people who liked looking out the window to see what was going on the ground, but of course, the woman seated in the window seat quickly closed the window. The other person in the row had very clearly been drinking and was laughing loudly to whatever movie they were watching. He wasn't into the movie. He tried to read, he tried to sleep, he tried to work on his computer, seeking that sweet distraction that his fellow travelers seemed to be enjoying. Finally, he gave in. He closed his eyes, felt the cranky thoughts, and relaxed. That's when he realized this crankiness did not consume him. It was not the overpowering monster that he had feared. It was much more like a whining child, complaining because they didn't get the right number of chicken nuggets or the right colored cup to drink out of. It was sad, but also kind of sweet and endearing. Life always has frustrations. The best strategy is to accept that. Doug Kraft says, "Life has its unavoidable discomforts, but it doesn't turn into anguish unless we have the hubris to think it should be different, just because we want it to be different." Life is filled with things that just happen to us, things beyond our control. That may be trauma from a distant past. It may be the frustration of our present life. Even seemingly small stuff like travel delays can occupy our entire mind and heart if we allow them. Sometimes what we want to change most are other people in our lives, whether friend or foe or even ourselves. I don't know if this has popped up in your world, but perfectionism is a buzzword that just keeps popping up on social media and in conversations with colleagues, and everyone seems to mean something slightly different by it. Psychology today says that perfectionism is a trait that makes life an endless report card on accomplishments and looks. A moderate drive to overcome hardships and to achieve success is healthy, but it can become unhealthy when it's negatively oriented, when it's all about avoiding failure. In the midst of perfectionism, we lose space for unconditional love, assuming that acceptance depends on our flawless performance. It's not just the insatiable drive that makes perfectionism dangerous, it's the singular vision of what success must look like. This week, I began looking at perfectionism in terms of growth. Perfectionism is not seeking growth so much, it is seeking to direct life into one particular single perfect mold. And that's really uncomfortable, even suffocating. This month I had some minor anxiety about growth and change of people that are very close to me. And I found some peace of mind in the metaphor of tending to a garden. This also comes from Thich Nhat Hanh. He reminds us that people change and grow. That's a beautiful thing. It's kind of the point of a garden. We would never expect a plant or a tree to stay exactly the same way over time. Like plants in the garden, people change and hopefully they thrive. The most useful thing that we can do is to help nourish them along the way toward health and fullness, whatever that looks like for them. Part of the work of gardening is also tending the compost. We can't completely protect our loved ones, but we can help till in and process the nasty stuff of life, the death and decay, until they're transformed into nutrients. In that way, we align ourselves with growth and development, rather than drive our loved ones or ourselves into one particular box or perfect model. Perhaps we can nurture each other to become the fullest expression of ourselves. We've talked a lot about change today, and it's a little bit theoretical. If you're anything like me, it can feel very easy to be stuck in a rut. After doing the same things for just a couple of months, it feels like we've been doing it forever. But I bet if you consider the past 10 years of your life, you'll see some pretty dramatic changes that have occurred. So I want to ask you a few questions to consider for yourself. In the past 10 years, how has your family changed, especially the youngest generation of that family? In the past 10 years, has your romantic life changed? Did you begin or end a relationship with a significant other? What about friends? Have you added new ones or lost some, or have those friendships changed? Has your housing changed? Have you moved? Or maybe new people living with you, or people no longer living with you? Did your job change in the past 10 years, or the major way you occupy your time? Maybe your religious or political outlook. And dare I ask, in the past 10 years, how has your body changed? I promise I'm not trying to induce stress or panic. I have a hunch after considering these questions, change is more a piece of your life than you normally think about. It has shaped the past, and it isn't going to stop. Change is inevitable. The only question is how we navigate it. Might we practice being uncomfortable a little bit? Might we get curious and explore what's possible? Might we practice acceptance and being in the moment, even when that moment is hard? Like I said earlier, resilience is a delicate balance between holding on to what we know and being flexible enough to bend in the storm. Resilience looks a whole lot like deep, abiding faith. Holding on to what is good and true and letting the rest wash away. Over time in this community, we get to practice that, and to learn from each other. And that is such a gift. Amen.